This is a video that's going to review the causes and effects of World War I. Some of the effects for World War I will be covered in the lead up in the second video to World War II, but these review some of the conditions that existed prior to World War I that really set the stage for a major conflict. World War I is also called the Great War. What's going on in Europe is we've got these conditions that exist that spell the acronym MAIN. And it's, I'll get all the text up here for you, MAIN is the idea of militarism, alliances, the I is for imperialism, and N is for nationalism. So let's look at some of the conditions that existed in Europe prior to World War I. Had these conditions not been present, maybe we would not have had a large-scale war to the extent that we did. But unfortunately, these conditions led and set the stage for what is going to be a world conflict rather than a conflict between a couple countries. Prior to, in the 1900s, leading up to World War I and the start of the war, you've got this big buildup of military. It's called militarism. They are countries and empires in Europe have built up their military, armies and navies to defend not only the borders of their country, but also all of the colonies that they have collected throughout the world. So they need to protect these colonies, protect somebody else from coming and taking those colonies. They need a large empire to do that. So they are already muscled up, ready to fight. And that's this idea of militarism. And the alliances, the A, is all of these economic and military agreements to defend an empire if attacked. And typically you're going to see this with smaller empires aligning with larger empires, so that if one is attacked, they've got a backup, because these empires are growing in scale and in military might, and it's a really scary time period in Europe, and so you see all of these alliances being formed. The I in MAIN spells imperialism, and this is this idea of colonization. It's this great competition between European empires. They are collecting, almost like pawns in a game, they are collecting these colonies. They no longer are trading with these countries that they've encountered during exploration. Now they are coming and taking them over. What they want these countries for are their raw materials. They're in the Industrial Revolution. They've got all of these finished goods that they're making, and in order to make a finished good, you need the raw materials to produce those. And so these colonies are really going to serve for a huge amount of wealth for Europe. So the empires are getting their wealth. They no longer can get all the raw materials from their country. And why would they? Because they can go out and collect all of these colonies and take and extract the raw materials from them. And this leads to this idea of imperialism and this big might that leads to glory. And the bigger their empire, the stronger and more powerful they are. And finally, we've got this condition of nationalism. This is this intense ethnic and national pride. And they're setting these boundaries, usually based on ethnicity and culture. And it's an extreme form. Nationalism isn't bad unless it's used and defined in that way in an extreme form, such that I'm better than you and I'm going to defend my country at any cost, despite if it's good or bad. These are the conditions that are in place that set the stage for the spark that's going to occur. So we've got the spark that kind of sets off in motion this entire world war. In 1914, June 28th, we have the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his lovely wife, the Duchess. They are doing, they're going in a motorcade. They're going down to see a demonstration of military force by the Austrian-Hungary Empire. They're in Bosnia, Sarajevo. Bosnia and Sarajevo are being annexed and occupied by the Austrian-Hungary Empire. This is creating oh so much conflict. So in the Balkans, which is this area here, you've got these people are all Slavic, and they believe that they should be neutral and that Austria and Hungary should mind their own business in a sense. And what happens is, since they've annexed Bosnia, they're in this motorcade. There is a group called the Black Hand, and we've got this lovely Serbian nationalist Princip who is working with the Black Hand. They're basically a terrorist group, and they plan out and scheme a plot to assassinate the Archduke, and that's exactly what they do. In this motorcade that goes through the city, Princip shoots both Franz Ferdinand and the Duchess at point blank range in their motorcade car, kill them almost instantly, and this is going to set off in motion kind of the spark, because Austria-Hungary is going to declare war on Serbia. So World War I begins in 1914, and what should have been a conflict between Austrian-Hungary Empire, remember Serbia's the one that sent the terrorist group over here to this annexed area to assassinate the next in line to the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, next in line to the Austrian-Hungary Empire. Well, but because of these tangled web of alliances, it's going to create, instead of a war between two, a world war between all of the major empires. So here's what happens. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Serbians are Slavic, like many Russians in this part of the Russian Empire. So the Russian Empire comes in to defend Serbia. Then the German Empire comes in to defend the Austrian-Hungary Empire. You've got Bulgaria pulled in. Great Britain and France then come in to defend their alliance, the Russian Empire. Italy is going to come in late. Turkey comes in to defend. And now, ladies and gentlemen, what was between two has now become between many. And you've got the Central Powers here, which is the Austrian-Hungary Empire. You've got the German Empire. You've got the Ottoman Empire, which is modern-day Turkey. And then on the other side, you've got the Russian Empire. You've got Great Britain. You've got France. Italy comes in late, although they were supposed to be in the Central Alliance. And then the United States enters really late in 1917. But this is this kind of the alliances that are engaged in 1914. And trench warfare, this in the Great War, they think this is going to be the war to end all war. It's the biggest, largest scale war they've ever seen. We've got modern advances. We've got machine guns. We've got U-boats. We've got airplanes armed with machine guns. We've got grenades, fire throwers. We've got tanks for the first time. This is a scale of modern warfare that nobody has ever seen before, and the death toll is devastating. You've got guys living in trenches pretty much for 4 years, because this is the only way to defend and dig in, literally, and defend the country's borders and line of defense, so they're not run over. This is going to be no man's land, which is burnt down, and you've got men living in trenches to kind of protect themselves and their countries. All right, moving on to the Russian Revolution. War is not over yet. Russian Revolution has been going on prior to the start of World War I. And kind of what's set the stage here, we've got Nicholas II, who is a czar. Well, a czar is like a king. He's an absolute ruler, has all the wealth. You've got a group of wealthy elite that have all the wealth, along with the monarchy, landowners, but very, very few people share in that. And you've got a lot of peasants who are starving. They don't have a lot of human rights or personal freedoms, and they're really tied to the land. They're they're basically peasants, and they're really tied to the land. So the Russian Revolution is led by Vladimir Lenin, and he comes in. He takes out Nicholas II, the monarch, and the monarchy is replaced by, led by the Bolsheviks, and he is the leader of this group of people that come in and create a communist country. Now remember, communism is the wealth is going to be owned by the government. The government is then going to redistribute it evenly to the people. And so you see this movement in Europe even after World War I, because it seems fair for the masses. And so the Bolsheviks are those masses that demand more stake in and kind of as a stakeholder in the country. So Vladimir Lenin, love that name, is going to be the leader of this. He creates a communist country, and it is the first in history. He makes a peace treaty with Germany, and Russia drops out. So the significance here, number one, is that Russia no longer is a country. He makes it the Soviet Union. Russia drops out of World War I, and they're trying to rebuild at this point. And the United States enters in 1917 with two different events. One is the sinking of the Lusitania in 1917. In 1917, the United States have been really not neutral at this point. While they're not technically in the war, we have been supplying our friends, our allies, France and Great Britain. And typically, to send a military boat overseas with supplies, you're just asking for it. You've got a target on your back. So a lot of these supplies are snuck in with passenger ships. The Lusitania is sunk by a German U-boat. A lot of American citizens and Great Britons die in the process. That's one of the first events that really start to anger the United States and the United States government. The second big thing, which is called the Zimmermann telegram. This is a telegram. It is sent by a German general, Zimmermann. It's supposed to be sent to Mexico down here to the German ambassador that's located in Mexico. So they've got ambassadors that are here serving for the German Empire. The telegram is supposed to go from Germany to this German ambassador. It's intercepted, it's decrypted, and by a British intelligence officer. And it says this, the German message to Mexico is, will you please let us launch a war and join our cause against the United States? If we win, I'm going to give you back Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. We'll carve that out. It's rightfully yours. Join our war cause. Well, once the United States finds out about the Zimmermann telegram, all bets are off and America joins the war. And 1 year later, the Allied powers win. The Central Powers lose. The United States joining the war effort really tips the balance for the Allied powers. The Central Powers, although look like they were winning for a good portion of the war, the Allied powers end up eking it out. Germany signs a peace armistice, basically, in a peace treaty. And Germany is going to be blamed for the war, which is going to be a problem. And we're going to see this in our next slide. Again, the Allied powers win, Central Powers lose, and a 4-year war starting in 1914 ends in 1918. It's considered the greatest war thus far in our history. And then, is it really a peace treaty? The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, blames Germany. Germany, they take not only valuable land, they take all of German colonies, or most of the German colonies. They restrict the German military pretty much down to a police force. And Germany has to pay, and they have to pay dearly. They have to pay billions in German marks. And the only way they can get them to do this is by blaming them. They have to sign a war guilt clause that the whole thing is all Germany's fault. It punishes Germany as the aggressor, which, while they were aggressive, didn't even start with Germany. Germany is going to be swallowing a very bitter pill. They're going to be angry. And this treaty is going to be the first slide in the next event leading up to World War II. But this is going to end our video on the